It was supposed to be just another quiet Tuesday morning. Claire Hensley, 29, clocked in at the downtown hardware store like she did every day for the past 3 years. Her uniform polo was freshly ironed, her hair tied back in a neat bun, and she had her usual thermos of lukewarm coffee in hand. Nothing about the day felt different. At least not at first. But within hours, she'd be standing on her front porch, staring at 17 strangers in tailored suits and luxury shoes, all of them millionaires, who'd come for her. But before that, her world had to fall apart. Claire wasn't flashy. She lived in a modest one-bedroom apartment on the south side of town, worked hard, and minded her business. She had no rich relatives, no secret inheritance, no viral fame. Just her job at the hardware store, where she quietly helped customers find the right screw sizes and paint finishes. To most, she was invisible. But not to the little boy whose bike she fixed that day. And definitely not to the people who would later track her down with news that would flip her entire life upside down. It started around 2 p.m. Claire was in aisle 7, restocking wrench sets, when she noticed a small figure lingering near the entrance. A boy, maybe 10 or 11, was standing just outside, peeking in like he wasn't sure he was allowed to come in. His clothes were dusty, his shoes were scuffed, and in his hands was a broken red bicycle with a snapped chain and a bent back wheel. Claire caught his eye, gave a small smile, and walked over. "Need some help?" she asked gently. The boy nodded, but didn't say much. He seemed nervous, eyes darting to the front counter where the assistant manager was already watching them with suspicion. Claire knelt next to the bike and examined it. The chain wasn't hard to fix. The wheel was trickier, but she could manage. She glanced back inside. No one was busy. It would take 10 minutes, 15 tops. So she did what felt right. She rolled the bike to the side of the store where the repair tools were kept and got to work. The boy sat on the curb, quietly watching, his face a mixture of hope and disbelief. Claire asked him a few questions, what his name was, how it broke, if his parents were nearby, but he stayed quiet. Just shook his head and stared at the bike like it was all he had left. 15 minutes later, the chain was fixed. The wheel was better, still a little bent, but rideable. Claire handed it back to him and smiled. "There you go. Try to ride safe, okay?" The boy didn't say a word. He just looked at her with wide eyes, nodded once, and pedaled off. Claire dusted off her hands, walked back inside, and was immediately called into the manager's office. It wasn't a discussion. It wasn't a warning. It was a termination. "You left your post during peak hours. That's a liability," her manager, a man named Paul who wore too much cologne and never remembered her birthday, said flatly. "We have policies here. You can't just do free repairs for kids who don't even come inside." Claire tried to explain. She said the boy looked like he had no one. That she wasn't even off the floor for that long. That it was just a bike. But Paul wasn't interested. By 2:45, she was jobless. Claire walked home that day in a daze. She didn't even call anyone. Who would she call? Her parents lived 3 states away and barely got by on their own. Her friends were mostly work friends. Rent was due in 12 days. Her savings? Almost gone. She sat on the edge of her bed that night, staring at her folded uniform in a plastic bag, wondering how trying to do something good could cost her so much. That's when her phone rang. She didn't recognize the number. It was local, but unfamiliar. probably spam. But something made her answer. A woman's voice came through the line, calm, polite, and slightly amused. "Hi. Is this Claire Hensley?" "Yes." "I hope you're not busy," the woman said. "Because there are 17 millionaires standing outside your front door. And they'd really like a word." Claire froze. "What?" she whispered. "I know it sounds strange," the voice said, chuckling softly. "But please, just open the door." Heart pounding, Claire stood, walked to the window, and pulled the curtain aside. What she saw made her knees buckle. Lined up on the sidewalk were people, men and women, dressed in sleek suits and elegant coats. No press. No cameras. Just them. One of them held a single yellow envelope. Another was holding a small bicycle, the red one with the now fixed chain and the still slightly bent wheel. Claire stumbled back, trying to process it. Her mind raced. Why were they here? Who were they? And how did this have anything to do with a boy's broken bike? Before she could decide whether to open the door or call the police, her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text. "We know what you did. The boy wasn't just any boy. He's everything. Please, let us explain." She stared at the message, her thoughts spinning. Her hands were shaking. The last 24 hours had already broken every expectation of what her life was supposed to be. And now, this? 17 millionaires outside her home, asking for a moment of her time. All because of one small act of kindness. One simple choice. She didn't know it yet, but that bike had changed her fate. And when she finally opened that door, nothing in her world would ever be the same again. Claire's fingers hovered over the doorknob, her heart thumping like a drum in her chest. The yellow envelope. The bicycle. The message. It all swirled in her head like pieces of a dream that didn't fit together. She wasn't the kind of person things like this happened to. Millionaires didn't show up on the porches of small-town hardware store clerks. And they definitely didn't come bearing bicycles and cryptic messages. Still, something about the voice on the phone had felt real. Calm. Sincere. Not like a prank. Not like a setup. She turned the knob and pulled the door open. A gust of cool air hit her face, and for a long moment, no one said a word. The group stood still, eyes fixed on her with a kind of reverence that made her skin crawl. Then, the woman who had called stepped forward. Tall, elegant, maybe in her 40s, with silver-streaked black hair pulled into a low bun. Her name tag read Margot. "You're Claire," Margot said softly, her voice just like on the phone. Claire nodded, not trusting her voice. Margot stepped aside, and the others instinctively made space as a man in a navy coat walked forward, carrying the red bicycle. He didn't speak either. Just set it down gently near Claire's feet, then straightened up and stepped back. "What is this?" Claire finally asked, her voice small but firm. "What do you want from me?" Margot smiled, not unkindly. "Actually, Claire, it's not about what we want from you. It's about what you've already given." Claire looked down at the bike, then back at them. "I don't understand." "You will," Margot said. "But we can't explain it out here. May we come in?" Claire hesitated. 17 strangers. In suits. At night. Every instinct told her to say no. To lock the door and call someone. But her curiosity, burning, rising, impossible to ignore, overruled everything. She nodded once. Just a few of you. Not all. Margot gave a respectful nod and gestured for two others to follow. An older man with a cane and a younger woman holding a tablet. Claire stepped aside as they entered, unsure if she was making the biggest mistake of her life. They settled in her small living room, sitting awkwardly on her thrift store couch and folding chairs. The silence was thick, like everyone was waiting for someone else to start. Claire stood near the wall, arms crossed tightly. The older man cleared his throat. I'm Raymond Langley. This is Elise. And you've met Margot. Claire gave a polite nod, still tense. We're part of a group, Raymond continued. You could call us benefactors. Investors, in a way. But what we invest in isn't companies. It's people. Rare people. The kind who do the right thing when no one's watching. Claire frowned. You mean charity? No, Margot said gently. Not charity. Integrity. Compassion. People who live their values, not for recognition, but because it's who they are. Raymond leaned forward, his voice low. The boy you helped? His name is Evan. But what you don't know, what you couldn't have known, is that Evan is the son of someone very important. His family keeps a low profile, and for good reason. But recently, Evan ran away. Claire blinked. Ran away? Yes, Elise said, tapping something on her tablet. He'd been struggling since his mother died last year. His father, a very private tech entrepreneur, was crushed. Evan disappeared 2 days ago. No note. No warning. Just, gone. Claire sat down slowly, the air sucked from her lungs. And I fixed his bike. Yes, Margot said. But more importantly, you saw him. You didn't ask for anything. You didn't call the police. You didn't even lecture him. You just helped. Raymond's eyes glistened. That act, Claire, simple as it was, reached people you'll never meet. Powerful people. People who believe that goodness, especially when no one's watching, is the rarest form of power. Claire swallowed hard. So, what? You all just reward people for being decent? Not everyone, Elise said. Most wouldn't have stopped. Some would have called security. Others might have ignored him. But you risked your job. And then you lost it. Claire looked away, her throat tight. Margot reached into her coat and pulled out the yellow envelope. This is just the beginning. It's an invitation. A door, if you choose to walk through it. But understand, this isn't a handout. It's an offer to step into something bigger. Something that will challenge you, stretch you, and maybe even scare you. Claire slowly took the envelope, her fingers trembling. Inside, she found a black card with gold lettering. No name. No address. Just a symbol, a tree with roots that stretched deep and wide, and 3 words. The foundation awaits. She looked up, heart pounding. What is this foundation? Raymond smiled faintly. It's where people like you find out how much they're really worth. Not in dollars. But in influence. In impact. Claire shook her head. I don't understand. I'm not anyone important. I just fixed a kid's bike. And that, Margot said softly, is exactly why you're here. The room fell silent again. Claire stared at the card, then at the people around her, trying to decide if this was real, or if she was still dreaming. But nothing about their eyes felt fake. Still, the questions piled up. Why her? Why now? Who were these people, really? And how far did this foundation reach? She wasn't ready to accept anything yet. But she couldn't ignore the pull inside her, the curiosity, the need to know more. Raymond stood slowly. You don't have to decide tonight. But if you choose to follow this path, someone will be waiting tomorrow at noon. 1 block from here. A black SUV. You'll know it when you see it. Margot added, no pressure. No obligation. But if you say yes, everything changes. Then, just like that, they left. Claire's stomach dropped. Are you saying he's in danger? Not anymore, Margot said. Because he found you. That didn't make sense. Claire opened the folder. Inside were surveillance photos, grainy shots of her fixing Evan's bike, another of her walking home afterward, and then, one that made her breath catch. It was a photo of her inside the store, weeks ago, talking to a woman she didn't recognize. Who is this? That, Margot said, is someone we've been watching for a long time. She's connected to a group that targets families like Evan's. Wealthy, private, and vulnerable. Claire shook her head. I don't understand. Why would someone want to hurt him? Money, Margot said. Control. Leverage. Evan's father created something that certain people want to own. Evan became the key. But he slipped away. And then, by chance, or fate, he found you. Claire stared at the photo, trying to process it all. So, what do you want me to do? Margot's expression didn't change. We want you to keep doing what you've already done. Protect people who can't protect themselves. Only this time, you won't be alone. Claire looked out the window. The lake shimmered under the gray sky. It all sounded noble. Important. But it also sounded terrifying. She wasn't trained. She wasn't special. She was just someone who did what felt right. Back at home that evening, Claire couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching her. Not paranoia, just a deep, cold instinct. She double-checked her locks. Closed the curtains. The streets outside looked normal, but she didn't feel normal anymore. Her world was shifting. Meanwhile, across town, another conversation was unfolding in a dark conference room. A man named Vincent Tarlow stood before a wall of monitors, all displaying different angles of Claire's day, her visit to the estate, her walk back home, her dinner at the kitchen table. He frowned. She's in, one of his associates said quietly. Tarlow nodded. She's a variable. She wasn't part of the original profile. This complicates things. The associate hesitated. Should we move on her? Not yet, Tarlow said. Let's see what the girl's made of. Claire had no idea people were tracking her every move. But she could feel something tightening around her life like a thread being pulled from every side. That night, she got another text. No number. Just a message. You've been noticed. Be careful who you trust. The next day, she returned to the foundation. The tension in the air was heavier now. She met a few more members, each with their own story. A woman named Isla who used to be a corporate accountant until she exposed a massive fraud. A former teacher named Jonah who saved a student from trafficking and had to go into hiding. They all had something in common: they made a choice to stand up, and they all paid a price. Claire listened quietly. The stories chilled her. But they also made her feel something unexpected: connected. But as her involvement deepened, so did the questions. She began to notice details others overlooked. Strange emails. A missing file in the Foundation's archive room. A door no one would talk about, always locked, even during meetings. One day, she confronted Elise. "What's behind that door?" Elise didn't flinch. "You're not ready." "But I deserve to know." Elise studied her. "Deserving it doesn't make it safe." That answer haunted Claire more than silence. Later that week, a man showed up at her building, gray jacket, quiet voice, said he was from the water company. But something felt off. His eyes lingered too long. He asked questions that had nothing to do with water. Claire watched him leave, then noticed the tag on his jacket was upside down. A fake. That night, she received a second envelope, this time slid under her door with no sound. Inside was a single photo. Evan, at a bus stop. A man in the background. The same man from her building. No message. No explanation. Just a warning. Claire's hands shook as she held the photo. Someone was circling. Watching. Testing her limits. The boy was still in danger. And now, so was she. But she wasn't running. She was in it now. All the way in. And deep down, she knew, whatever this was, it was far bigger than her. And far from over. Claire didn't sleep after the photo arrived. The image of Evan at that lonely bus stop, and the man lurking behind him, burned in her mind like a warning she couldn't ignore. Someone was circling closer, closing in, and if she didn't act fast, something terrible was going to happen. She kept the lights low and the curtains drawn, pacing her small apartment with that photo clenched in her hand. She knew the Foundation was powerful, but they had enemies. People like Vincent Tarlow, operating in shadows, manipulating things from behind the scenes. And now she was caught in the middle, a woman who just tried to do something decent and ended up in a storm she never saw coming. The next morning, Claire returned to the Foundation's estate, this time not asking questions, just demanding answers. Margot met her in the hallway, calm as always, but Claire didn't let her speak first. "Someone was in my building," Claire said sharply. "I got another envelope. No message, just a photo of Evan with a man in the background. A fake utility jacket. Same guy came to my door pretending to check the pipes." Margot's jaw tightened. "Did he see anything inside?" "No. But he was looking for something." Margot turned, motioning for Claire to follow her. "It's starting sooner than we thought," she said under her breath. "What's starting?" Claire pressed. "You keep giving me these half-answers like I'm not already in danger." But as her involvement deepened, so did the questions. She began to notice details others overlooked. Strange emails. A missing file in the Foundation's archive room. A door no one would talk about, always locked, even during meetings. One day, she confronted Elise. "What's behind that door?" Elise didn't flinch. "You're not ready." "But I deserve to know." Elise studied her. "Deserving it doesn't make it safe." That answer haunted Claire more than silence. Later that week, a man showed up at her building, gray jacket, quiet voice, said he was from the water company. But something felt off. His eyes lingered too long. He asked questions that had nothing to do with water. Claire watched him leave, then noticed the tag on his jacket was upside down. A fake. That night, she received a second envelope, this time slid under her door with no sound. Inside was a single photo. Evan, at a bus stop. A man in the background. The same man from her building. No message. No explanation. Just a warning. Claire's hands shook as she held the photo. Someone was circling. Watching. Testing her limits. The boy was still in danger. And now, so was she. But she wasn't running. She was in it now. All the way in. And deep down, she knew, whatever this was, it was far bigger than her. And far from over. Claire didn't sleep after the photo arrived. The image of Evan at that lonely bus stop, and the man lurking behind him, burned in her mind like a warning she couldn't ignore. Someone was circling closer, closing in, and if she didn't act fast, something terrible was going to happen. She kept the lights low and the curtains drawn, pacing her small apartment with that photo clenched in her hand. She knew the foundation was powerful, but they had enemies. People like Vincent Tarlow, operating in shadows, manipulating things from behind the scenes. And now she was caught in the middle, a woman who just tried to do something decent and ended up in a storm she never saw coming. The next morning, Claire returned to the Foundation's estate, this time not asking questions, just demanding answers. Margot met her in the hallway, calm as always, but Claire didn't let her speak first. "Someone was in my building," Claire said sharply. "I got another envelope. No message, just a photo of Evan with a man in the background. A fake utility jacket. Same guy came to my door pretending to check the pipes." Margot's jaw tightened. Did he see anything inside? No. But he was looking for something. Margot turned, motioning for Claire to follow her. "It's starting sooner than we thought," she said under her breath. "What's starting?" Claire pressed. "You keep giving me these half-answers like I'm not already in danger." Margot led her into a side room Claire hadn't seen before. Inside, Elise and Raymond were already seated, reviewing files spread across a large table. There were surveillance photos, maps, diagrams of what looked like underground tunnels and safe houses. Claire stared, stunned. "This isn't just about Evan," Raymond said quietly. "It's about everything connected to him. His father's work, it wasn't just tech. It was security encryption. Defense level. He built systems that could protect whistleblowers, journalists, activists, people the powerful wanted to silence. And those systems? They went missing after his wife's death." Margot added, "The boy may know where the last piece is. We believe he saw something he doesn't even realize is valuable." Claire stepped back, trying to take it in. "And the people after him? Tarlow?" Raymond nodded. "Tarlow's part of a private network. A mercenary force for hire. Quiet, lethal, and well-funded. He doesn't work for any one government. He works for power." Claire's heart pounded. "So Evan's just a tool to them. A key." Elise looked up. "And you, Claire, you're the lock they didn't expect." The room fell silent. Outside the windows, gray clouds gathered above the lake, casting the whole building in a dim light that matched the mood. Claire leaned over the table, her eyes locked on a marked-up map of the city. "So what's the plan?" "There's a meet scheduled," Margot said. "We've traced a pattern in Tarlo's movements. A private hangar outside the city. We believe he's preparing to move something, or someone. Evan may already be en route." "Why haven't we stopped him already?" Claire asked. "Because we're not sure who inside the Foundation we can trust," Elise said. "We've had leaks before. Information gets out before we can act." Claire blinked. "You think there's a traitor?" Raymond gave a slow nod. "We think there's more than one." The walls seemed to close in around her. Everything she thought she knew about this organization, its strength, its reach, was suddenly under question. And Evan, a boy who'd trusted her without a word, was still in danger. They made a decision to move quickly. Claire was given a new identity card, an encrypted phone, and strict instructions to remain off the grid until the operation. But even as she prepared for what lay ahead, she couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Not with the plan. Not with the Foundation. And not with the way Elise kept watching her when she thought no one noticed. That night, Claire left her apartment for a safe house provided by the Foundation. It was an abandoned firehouse on the edge of town, retrofitted with high-tech locks and reinforced windows. She was supposed to feel secure there, but instead, it felt like a trap waiting to be sprung. She spent hours reviewing the files they gave her. Evan's sketches. Old emails from his father. Pieces of encrypted code embedded in children's books. It was all too much, too strange, too dangerous for a kid to be caught in the middle of. Claire couldn't help but feel something had been missed, something crucial. Then, around midnight, the encrypted phone buzzed. "Unknown contact, don't trust Elise. Check page 11 of Evan's notebook." Claire's pulse jumped. She scrambled to grab the folder and flipped open the worn notebook she hadn't paid enough attention to before. Page 11 was a child's drawing, crude, uneven, innocent at first glance. But then she saw it, in the corner of the page, drawn so small she nearly missed it, was a symbol. The same one from the black card. The tree. And under it, a name. E.L. Elise Langston. Claire sat back, stunned. Her hands trembled as she stared at the page. Could it be true? She didn't sleep. Couldn't. And by morning, she had made up her mind. She couldn't go to Margot. Not yet. Not without proof. She needed to confront Elise herself, alone. So when the black SUV arrived at the safe house to pick her up, Claire didn't get in. Instead, she slipped out the back and took a rideshare to the Foundation's archives. If Elise was hiding something, it would be there. She snuck in using the identity card they'd given her. The halls were empty, too empty. As if someone had cleared the building before she arrived. Her footsteps echoed as she moved deeper into the building, past the familiar rooms, toward the locked section Elise always brushed off. But this time, the door was open. Inside, rows of boxes and digital records hummed under dim lights. Claire moved fast, scanning labels, checking dates. Then she found it, a file marked Langston, Phase 2. She pulled it out and opened it. Inside were documents, travel logs, intercepted messages, and finally, photos. Elise shaking hands with a man in a gray jacket. The same man who'd come to Claire's building pretending to be from the water company. Claire's stomach dropped. It was true. Elise was working with Tarlo. Feeding him information. Keeping tabs on Claire. Maybe even setting Evan up. She heard a noise behind her. Claire turned fast, heart racing. Elise stood in the doorway, expression calm, but her eyes were ice. "I was hoping you wouldn't find that," Elise said softly, stepping into the room and slowly closing the door behind her. Claire backed up, file still in hand. "Why? Why would you betray all of this?" Elise gave a faint smile. "Because truth doesn't pay. But secrets? Secrets are currency." Claire's grip tightened on the folder. The door behind Elise was shut. Her only exit. And now she knew the truth. But Elise knew she knew. Neither of them moved. Then Elise whispered, "You were never just a bystander, Claire. You were the wild card. And now? Now, you've made your move." And just like that, the lights went out. Claire was alone in the dark, with the truth, with the lies, and with nowhere left to run. And the sound of footsteps, soft and sure, came closer. Claire's breath caught in her throat. The sound of footsteps echoing in the dark wasn't just Elise moving closer, it was heavier, slower, and coming from another direction. Her fingers clutched the folder tight against her chest as she backed into a row of shelving units, the documents inside rustling like dry leaves. For a moment, she didn't know whether to run, fight, or hide. Then the emergency lights flickered on, casting the archive room in an eerie red glow. Elise was no longer standing alone. Behind her, stepping out of the shadows, was someone Claire never expected to see again. Raymond. But his face, his expression, it wasn't relief or confusion. It was cold. Focused. "Elise wasn't working alone," he said quietly. "You really thought we didn't know you'd go digging, Claire?" Claire's pulse hammered. Her mind raced through every conversation they'd shared. The warmth, the concern, it had all been part of the act. Elise turned toward him. "She's got the files." Raymond nodded. "Then take them." "No," Claire said, her voice stronger than she felt. "I don't know what you're doing, or what this really is, but I'm not handing anything over." Raymond stepped forward, unhurried. "It's not about you anymore. It never was. You were just convenient. A good face for the foundation. Empathetic. Trustworthy. Evan trusted you, and that made you valuable. So this whole time," Claire said, "the foundation, it's not what it claims to be." Elise gave a tired sigh. "Parts of it are. But the rest? Smoke and mirrors. You think 17 millionaires showed up at your door because you fixed a kid's bike? They were there to measure you. To test you. You passed, too well, actually." Claire's eyes darted around the room, searching for anything. An object, a route, something she could use. "Where's Evan?" she demanded. Raymond raised an eyebrow. "Safe. For now. He gave us what we needed. Or he will. We just need a little more persuasion." Claire's heart twisted. The boy who trusted her, who had barely spoken but whose eyes said everything, he was in their hands. She couldn't let this end here. Suddenly, a soft beep echoed from the phone in her jacket. She hadn't even realized it was still in her pocket. The encrypted phone Margot gave her. She pulled it out slowly and saw a flashing message across the screen. "Do not speak. Do not move. Listen." She didn't flinch. Just kept her expression flat as she let the message scroll. "Room is being recorded. You're not alone. Help is in place. Just stall. Claire looked up, heart racing. She couldn't be sure who sent the message, but it had to be from someone still loyal. Maybe Margot. Maybe someone else inside who'd been watching things unfold. I don't think you understand what kind of fire you're playing with, she said to Elise, trying to keep her voice steady. You say you want secrets. But secrets don't just sit still. They leak. And someone out there is watching you. Raymond laughed quietly. Let them. By the time they realize what we've done, we'll be long gone. You have no idea what Evan's father built. You think it was just a security system? It was a backdoor into the highest levels of encrypted intelligence. Governments. Corporations. Military programs. One boy holds the key, and you just happened to be standing close when he needed a place to hide. Elise stepped closer, extending her hand. Give me the file, Claire. Before you do something that gets you hurt. Claire looked at the hand, then at the flickering red lights. Somewhere in this building, someone had activated a silent alarm. That's what she hoped, at least. She had no weapons. No backup. All she had was time, and it was running out. Then, a crash. The door to the archives burst open. A flash of movement, a shadow swept in fast and silent. Claire ducked, instinct taking over. A loud grunt echoed as Raymond slammed into a shelving unit. A figure, masked, all black, had taken him down with brutal efficiency. Elise pulled something from her coat, Claire couldn't see what, but it gleamed. Before Elise could act, the masked figure grabbed her wrist and twisted, sending whatever she was holding skidding across the floor. Move, the figure shouted to Claire. Without thinking, Claire ran. She bolted down the corridor, not looking back. The folder was still in her hand, every step hammering into her like gunfire. Down one hall, then another. Alarms blared now. Somewhere behind her, voices shouted, feet pounded the ground. She reached a side exit, pushed through the heavy metal door, and stumbled into a cold wind. Outside, a van waited, engine running. The door slid open and two people pulled her inside before she could ask who they were. One of them, a woman with short, dark curls, nodded at her. You did good. Now we get him back. Claire looked around, breathing hard. Evan. Where is he? He's on the move, the woman said. They're trying to relocate him tonight. But we've intercepted communications. We know where they're taking him. Claire held up the folder. Everything in here proves Elise and Raymond were in on it. The woman nodded. That's why you're coming with us. Because this isn't just about one boy anymore. It's about everyone they've silenced. Everyone they've used. The van sped into the night, tires screeching. As the city lights blurred past the windows, Claire realized the real war was just beginning. The foundation was fractured. The people she thought she could trust had sold their souls. And Evan, just a child, was being used as leverage in a game too dangerous for anyone to play. But Claire wasn't backing out. Not now. She was going to bring him home. And she was going to burn down everything that tried to break him. No matter what it cost. The van swerved off the main road and into a quiet industrial park on the outskirts of the city. Claire sat in the back, clutching the folder like it was her lifeline. The woman beside her, who'd only introduced herself as Nadine, had been scanning a tablet non-stop, tracking movement from surveillance drones and intercepted audio. "They're holding Evan at a freight terminal," Nadine said, her voice tight. "North Dock, Warehouse 17. Raymond's team is already inside. If we're going to get him out, we do it now. No backup. Just us." Claire nodded, her heart pounding. The boy she'd met on a curb with a broken bike was somewhere in that building, trapped, maybe scared, maybe waiting for someone to show him the world hadn't completely lost its mind. She had no training, no tactical experience, but what she did have was something Elise and Raymond had underestimated: resolve. A kind of quiet strength they never saw coming. The van came to a stop and the door slid open. Cold wind rushed in. Ahead, dim floodlights buzzed over rows of shipping containers and trucks. Warehouse 17 loomed in the distance, dark except for a thin glow from its upper windows. "We'll go around the back," Nadine said, pulling a compact earpiece from her coat and handing it to Claire. "Stay low. Stay close. And no matter what you see, don't stop." They crept across the gravel yard, weaving between crates and half-loaded pallets. As they approached the loading dock, voices floated through the cracked door. "Just finished the upload," a man barked. "Then we move. She's not walking out of this one." Claire's blood turned cold. They weren't just using Evan. They were planning to erase every piece of evidence, and her with it. Nadine signaled for her to wait, then disappeared into the shadows. Claire took a breath and edged closer. Through a gap in the metal slats, she saw Evan, tied to a chair, staring blankly ahead. His hands were trembling, but his eyes were sharp. Watching. Listening. A small device blinked on the table beside him, hooked up to a laptop. Claire recognized it instantly. One of the prototypes Evan's father had worked on. A data bridge. Raymond stood beside him, flanked by 2 armed guards. Elise paced nearby, phone pressed to her ear. "We're wiping the system in 5. Once the files are gone, no one can trace it back to us." Claire looked around desperately. No Nadine. No backup. Just her. But then something shifted. A loud crack rang through the air, a spotlight above the warehouse exploded, plunging the space into partial darkness. Confusion erupted. The guards spun, guns raised. Claire ran. She slipped through the side door just as Elise shouted, "She's here." Claire didn't stop. She lunged for Evan, knocked the device off the table, and yanked at the zip ties on his wrists. "We're getting out of here. Now. Behind you." Evan shouted. Claire turned just in time to see one of the guards raise his weapon, but before he could fire, a blast of compressed air knocked him to the ground. Nadine burst through the broken entry, disarming the second guard with a stun baton. Elise scrambled back toward the terminal, but Raymond grabbed Claire's arm. "You think this ends with a rescue?" he hissed. "You don't know who you're dealing with. We're not the only ones after this data." Claire didn't hesitate. She slammed the edge of the broken laptop into his hand, forcing him to release her. Nadine dragged him down and cuffed him with a flex tie. "Go," she shouted. "Get the kid out." Claire and Evan ran, through the rows of crates, past flashing alarms and flickering lights, toward the waiting van. Behind them, the warehouse lit up with the sound of sirens and the spinning of black SUVs pulling into the yard. Reinforcements. But whose? They reached the van, slammed the doors shut, and peeled off just as another SUV skidded around the corner. Inside, Evan clung to Claire's arm, finally speaking through clenched teeth. They didn't want the files. They wanted me to decode something. My dad hid a key in the system, but only I can activate it. Claire blinked. Did you give it to them? No, he said, shaking his head. I gave them a decoy. Claire let out a breath. Smart kid. Smarter than they'd ever given him credit for. They drove for hours, changing vehicles twice, until finally they reached a safe location deep in the countryside, a secluded farmhouse monitored by people Claire didn't recognize but who treated Evan like he was gold. Nadine took Claire aside. You did it. We got what we needed. Elise and Raymond are in custody. Their network's being dismantled as we speak. Claire nodded, exhausted. What happens now? We protect the boy. The real files, the ones he never decrypted, we'll bury them until the time is right. But you're done. Unless you want back in. Claire looked at Evan, sitting quietly on the porch, finally at peace. She smiled faintly. I think I just want to fix bikes again. Nadine chuckled. You've earned that. But just as Claire turned to head inside, her phone buzzed, an unknown number again. She hesitated, then answered. A distorted voice came through the speaker. Calm. Precise. You did well. But this was only phase 1. The others are watching now. And they've taken interest in you. The line went dead. Claire stared at the phone. Somewhere in the shadows, someone was still pulling strings. And the game, whatever it was far from over. Claire sat on the porch steps of the farmhouse, the morning sun brushing against her skin like a quiet promise. Birds chirped in the trees, and for the first time in weeks, there was no sound of sirens or surveillance drones or urgent knocks on the door. Just calm. Evan was in the garden with Nadine, watering herbs with more focus than most grown-ups ever gave to anything. His small hands moved with care, and Claire saw something in him she hadn't before, not just intelligence, but healing. The voice on the phone haunted her, though. She hadn't told Nadine about it. Not yet. She needed to think, to sit with the weight of what that message might mean. Someone had been watching from even higher up. And if Elise and Raymond weren't the top of the ladder, then what kind of structure had she just rattled? Still, part of her was at peace. The Foundation's public face had collapsed. Headlines had begun circling the web, charity under fire for data theft scheme, and anonymous whistleblower leaks evidence of global surveillance plot. Claire's name wasn't in any of them, but she didn't need it to be. The people who mattered knew the truth. She had walked through fire to protect a child, and a piece of technology that could have turned nations against each other. Later that day, Margot finally arrived at the safe house. She stepped out of a black sedan wearing her usual oversized coat and sunglasses, carrying a small box under one arm. Claire met her halfway down the gravel path. I heard you made quite the escape, Margot said with a sly smile. Claire shrugged. I had help. I always did like picking the right people. They sat at the old picnic table while Evan ran circles around them with a stick pretending it was a lightsaber. Margot placed the box on the table and opened it. Inside was the original prototype, a sleek black device no larger than a deck of cards, glowing faintly along its edges. Your boy there knew exactly how to outsmart them, Margot said. Gave them a sandbox version. Every file they uploaded was fake. Claire looked at the device. What happens to it now? We keep it hidden. Deep. Somewhere no one can trace. And Evan? He'll have a chance at a life that doesn't include people chasing him for his mind. Claire's eyes drifted to the boy. He's just a kid. He deserves peace. Margot nodded slowly. And what about you? Claire took a breath. I used to think helping people meant small gestures. Fixing bikes. Lending a hand. Then all this happened and I realized something. Doing the right thing isn't always quiet. Sometimes it gets loud. Messy. Dangerous. But it still matters. Margot smiled. Maybe you were meant for more than grease and wrenches. Maybe, Claire said. But there's comfort in simple things. When the world spins too fast, sometimes you need to touch the ground again. That night, Evan left a small drawing on her bed, him and Claire riding bikes side by side, with a sun and a tree in the background. Above it, he'd written in crooked letters, "Thank you for saving me." She stared at the drawing for a long time. Not because it made her sad, but because it reminded her why she'd done everything. The risk. The fear. The sleepless nights. It had led to this, hope. Days passed, and with each sunrise, the urgency faded. The files had been sent to trusted contacts across the globe, ensuring that if the people behind the foundation tried anything again, they wouldn't go unnoticed. The world didn't know Claire's name, but she had left fingerprints on history. One morning, while sipping coffee from a chipped mug, Nadine handed Claire a new phone. Encrypted. Clean. No GPS. It's yours if you ever want back in. Claire turned the phone over in her hand, then placed it gently on the table. I'll keep it close. Just in case. She didn't want to be part of a shadow war. But if they ever came for Evan again, or someone else like him, she'd be ready. She wasn't just a bike mechanic anymore. She was a protector. A survivor. A fighter, even if she didn't wear the title on her sleeve. 3 weeks later, Claire returned to her old neighborhood. The streets looked the same, but everything felt different. The repair shop was still closed, but the windows were clean, and a new sign had been painted, "Reopening soon." People she hadn't seen in months waved to her from porches. One of the neighborhood kids ran up with a bike chain in his hands, grinning. "Hey, Miss Claire, can you fix this?" She knelt down and took the chain. "Yeah. I can fix it." As she worked, she noticed a small note tucked in the shop's mailbox. No name. Just a card with a single line. "You were the right choice." She smiled. Whoever had pulled strings behind the scenes had chosen her for a reason. Not because she was loud or flashy, but because she did the right thing when it mattered most. And as she stood up, wiping grease from her hands, Claire looked down the street and saw a delivery van pull up. 17 men and women stepped out, familiar faces, some she hadn't seen since that strange afternoon when they'd stood outside her door and offered her a mystery. Only now, they didn't come with offers or files or tests. They came with tools, paint, wood, and new parts. They were rebuilding the shop, with her. No words were exchanged. Just a nod. A quiet acknowledgement that the work wasn't over, but it had changed. Claire didn't ask questions. She rolled up her sleeves. The foundation had fallen. Evan was safe. The technology was secured. And the people who once acted from the shadows were choosing a different kind of mission, helping, for real this time. As the sun dipped behind the rooftops and the first light bulb in the shop flickered on again, Claire leaned against the doorframe. She had faced corruption, betrayal, and danger. But she'd also found courage, community, and purpose. And while the world still held its share of secrets, she knew one thing for sure. Sometimes, fixing a child's bike is the start of something much bigger. And sometimes, a simple act of kindness can shake the entire world.